Luke had just returned home after a long day at the sheriff's office. The streets of his quiet suburban neighborhood were bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. Birds sang their evening songs, and the scent of freshly mown lawns filled the air. Luke placed his keys on the counter and sighed. It had been a busy day at work, and all he wanted was some peace in his own home. He walked slowly through the hallway, noticing how neat everything looked. The living room was tidy, the kitchen was clean, and the small garden visible through the window had started to bloom beautifully in the warm sunlight. He smiled to himself, appreciating the calm of his private space. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed through the house. Luke frowned. Visitors were rare at this hour, and he didn't expect anyone today. He walked to the front door and opened it, surprised to see Ms. Hilda, a well-known member of the neighborhood HOA. She had a reputation for being strict and very serious about the rules. Her clothes were perfectly neat, and she carried herself with an air of authority. "Good evening, Luke," Hilda said with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "I noticed a few things in your yard, and I thought I should come in and see them for myself." Luke blinked in surprise. "Come in without asking?" Hilda ignored his question and stepped inside before he could stop her. "I'm just here to make sure the neighborhood stays perfect. You know how important rules are." Luke's brow furrowed. He wanted to remind her that his home was private, but he stayed calm. "Hilda, I understand your concern, but I prefer that people ask before entering my house." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, don't worry. It won't take long. I just want to check a few things. You will understand once I explain." Luke decided to stay calm. He knew from his training at the sheriff's office that situations like this could quickly escalate, if not handled carefully. He followed her into the living room, maintaining a safe distance. As Hilda walked around the room inspecting furniture and looking out the windows, Luke noticed her taking out a small notepad. She wrote down notes, murmuring about the arrangement of the furniture and the condition of the carpet. She acted as if she had full authority over his house. Luke finally spoke. "Hilda, I think this is enough. I need you to leave now." Hilda turned and smiled, almost as if she had not expected him to speak. "Oh, you don't understand. I have the right to inspect homes for HOA compliance. It is part of my duty." Luke's eyes narrowed. "I know the HOA has rules, but entering my home without my permission is trespassing. That is against the law." Hilda laughed lightly, a sound meant to dismiss his warning. "Trespassing? I'm just helping. You don't need to worry." Luke's voice grew firmer. "Hilda, I'm a sheriff. You are in my home without consent. I am asking you to leave. If you don't, there will be consequences." Hilda paused, slightly startled. "The sheriff? Oh, you're joking. I doubt you would act seriously over this." Luke did not respond immediately. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his badge, showing it calmly. Hilda's eyes widened. For the first time, she realized she had underestimated the situation. "You didn't know, did you?" Luke said quietly but firmly. "Now you do. And now, because you entered without permission, you are breaking the law." Hilda tried to recover her composure, adjusting her glasses and straightening her clothes. I was only doing my duty. I didn't think it would matter." Luke shook his head. "It does matter. Respecting private property is not optional. I'm giving you one last chance to leave voluntarily." Hilda looked around nervously. The confident and controlling woman who had entered his home so boldly now seemed unsure and anxious. I didn't realize," she murmured. Luke stepped closer, keeping his tone calm but serious. "It doesn't matter what you thought. What matters is that you have trespassed. I am putting you under arrest for entering a private residence without consent." Hilda's face turned pale. She opened her mouth to argue but found no words. The power she usually carried in the neighborhood vanished as she realized the situation had completely changed. Luke gently guided her toward the door and placed handcuffs on her wrists, making sure she could not resist. Neighbors peered curiously through their windows as Hilda, the strict HOA enforcer, was escorted out of Luke's house in handcuffs. Some whispered to each other in disbelief. Others shook their heads. Nobody expected the woman who gave orders in the neighborhood to be treated like this. Luke walked back inside and closed the door. He took a deep breath and called the station to report the incident. He explained everything calmly, making sure all details were clear. His training as a sheriff made him confident in handling such situations without letting anger or frustration take over. As he hung up the phone, he felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Hilda had overstepped her authority, but now she would learn an important lesson about boundaries. His home was his safe place, and it was protected by law. After a few moments of quiet, Luke went to the living room and looked out the window. The sunset had turned the sky into shades of pink and gold. Everything was calm again, and the neighborhood had returned to its peaceful rhythm. He smiled quietly to himself, proud of how he handled the situation without conflict. Luke then went into his kitchen and poured a glass of water. He sat at the table, letting the events of the evening sink in. It had been an unexpected situation, tense and surprising, but it ended with the right outcome. He felt a sense of relief knowing that justice had been maintained in his own home. Later, Luke checked his garden. The flowers were beginning to bloom, and the small fountain he had installed was gently splashing water into the pond. He felt a sense of calm and accomplishment. Life in the neighborhood could be complicated, but tonight he had maintained peace in the place that mattered most: his home. He reflected on Hilda's actions. She had been so sure of herself, so confident that rules could override personal boundaries. But Luke understood that knowledge of the law and patience were more powerful than arrogance. Respect and understanding were necessary, and he had shown that even someone confident could be taught a lesson without harshness or anger. As night fell, Luke sat by the window, watching the stars appear. The neighborhood lights twinkled softly, and the air was filled with quiet sounds of evening. He knew tomorrow would bring new challenges at the station, but tonight, he could enjoy the calm of his home and the satisfaction of doing the right thing. Luke leaned back in his chair, took a deep breath, and smiled. Life could be unpredictable, but as a sheriff and as a homeowner, he knew how to handle surprises. And sometimes, those surprises taught important lessons about respect, boundaries, and the balance between authority and kindness. The next morning, Luke woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside his window. He stretched, yawned, and took a deep breath of the cool morning air. The events of the previous evening were still fresh in his mind. Hilda's unexpected intrusion and her arrest had left him feeling a mixture of relief and curiosity about what would happen next. After breakfast, Luke stepped outside to check the mailbox. Almost immediately, he noticed something unusual. Several neighbors were gathered near the sidewalk, talking in hushed voices and glancing in his direction. As he approached, he recognized some familiar faces: Mr. Thomas from 2 houses down, Mrs. Lilly from across the street, and a few others from the community. "Good morning, Luke," Mrs. Lilly said, waving cautiously. "We heard what happened last night. Is everything okay?" Luke nodded, keeping a calm expression. "Everything is fine. Hilda entered my home without permission, and I had to handle the situation. She is learning a lesson about boundaries and respecting private property." The neighbors murmured among themselves. Some seemed shocked, while others looked impressed. Mr. Thomas shook his head in disbelief. "I can't believe it. Hilda, in handcuffs? I never imagined I would see that." Luke smiled faintly. "It was unexpected, but sometimes people need to understand that rules do not give anyone the right to violate the law or personal space." As Luke returned to his house, he noticed Hilda walking down the street toward the small HOA office at the end of the block. Her posture had changed. She no longer carried the confident air she usually did. Instead, her shoulders were slumped, and she walked slowly as if she were thinking deeply about the events of the night before. Inside his home, Luke went through his usual morning routine while keeping an eye on the street. The buzz from neighbors continued, and some even waved politely, showing their support. Luke felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that the truth of what had happened would soon be understood by everyone. Later that day, the HOA office seemed unusually busy. Luke watched from his porch as Hilda entered the building and sat down at a desk, speaking with another HOA member. From what he could see, she seemed to be explaining her side of the story, but her gestures were subdued. The usual assertiveness she displayed in neighborhood meetings was replaced with careful words and thoughtful expressions. By noon, Luke received a phone call from his colleague at the station, Officer Maria. "Hey Luke, we got the report. Hilda is officially recorded for trespassing. Are you okay with the paperwork being processed?" Luke smiled. "Yes, Maria, it's important to maintain the law. I handled it calmly and she understands the seriousness now." Maria chuckled softly. I have to admit, it's not every day we see an HOA member arrested. The neighborhood will be talking about this for a while. Luke laughed quietly. I imagine they will. But I think it will help people understand that rules have limits and respect for personal space is essential. After the call, Luke went back outside to continue some gardening. He had always found peace in tending to his small yard, planting flowers and arranging the garden neatly. As he worked, he noticed some neighbors stopping by to say hello. "Hi, Luke," called out a young mother from a nearby house. "I just wanted to check if you're okay. That must have been stressful." Luke nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I'm fine. Thank you for checking. It was unexpected, but everything is under control now." A few children ran past, laughing as they played a game on the sidewalk. Luke watched them for a moment, feeling content. Despite the incident with Hilda, life in the neighborhood continued peacefully, and he was glad to see that daily routines were uninterrupted. Meanwhile, at the HOA office, Hilda was still busy. She had made several phone calls and sent emails, trying to explain her actions and justify her decisions. However, it was clear that she felt uneasy. The confidence she usually carried in every neighborhood meeting had diminished, replaced by the weight of responsibility and reflection. Hilda's assistant, a young woman named Clara, looked concerned. "Hilda, are you sure this is the right approach? The neighbors are talking and some are questioning your actions." Hilda sighed deeply. "I know, Clara. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I misjudged the situation. Luke is not just any resident. He knows the law and respects the rules. I overstepped." Clara nodded gently. "It happens to everyone at some point. Maybe this is an opportunity to learn and improve." Hilda's eyes softened. "Yes, perhaps. I have been so focused on enforcing the rules that I forgot the most important part, respecting others' boundaries." Back at his home, Luke continued his day quietly. He went inside to prepare lunch and noticed the peaceful atmosphere in his living room. The sunlight streamed through the windows and the furniture seemed to shine in the warm light. It was a small reminder that his home was his sanctuary, and protecting it meant more than simply following rules. It meant creating a safe and calm space for himself and others he cared about. By late afternoon, the neighborhood buzz had grown louder. Neighbors gathered on porches, discussing the events from last night. Luke observed quietly, staying inside his home but appreciating the mix of curiosity and respect in their voices. Some were surprised at Hilda's arrest, others were supportive of Luke's actions, and many seemed relieved that someone had set a clear example about respecting private property. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Luke decided to take a walk. He wanted to stretch his legs and see how the neighborhood was reacting firsthand. As he walked, people waved politely and smiled, acknowledging him. The conversations were mostly about simple topics, gardening tips, weekend plans, but occasionally the topic shifted to Hilda's incident. "Luke, it was really brave of you to handle that calmly," said Mr. Thomas. "I don't think many people could have stayed so composed." Luke shrugged lightly. It wasn't about bravery. It was about respect for the law and for personal boundaries. Sometimes people need reminders, even those in positions of authority. The neighbors nodded in agreement. The atmosphere was supportive, and Luke realized that his actions had earned their respect and trust. That evening, as Luke returned home, he noticed a small envelope placed neatly on his doorstep. Curious, he picked it up and opened it. Inside was a simple note from Clara, Hilda's assistant. "Luke, thank you for handling the situation calmly and professionally. Hilda is reflecting on her actions and will take steps to ensure this does not happen again. Your approach has been a lesson in patience and fairness. Sincerely, Clara." Luke smiled quietly, feeling a sense of closure. The situation had been tense, but it had ended without conflict or anger. He placed the note on the kitchen counter, appreciating the small acknowledgement of his careful handling of the incident. As night fell, Luke settled into his favorite chair with a book. The neighborhood was calm again, and the events of the past day seemed like a distant memory. He reflected on the lessons learned, not just for Hilda, but for everyone who had witnessed the situation. Respect, patience, and understanding were more powerful than strict enforcement of rules. Luke closed his book and looked out the window at the quiet street. The stars twinkled softly above, and the air was filled with the peaceful sounds of night. Despite the unexpected visitor and the challenges of the day, Luke felt content. He had protected his home, maintained the law, and reminded everyone, including Hilda, that respect for others was the foundation of any community. The morning after the incident, Luke woke up to a quiet house. The soft hum of the neighborhood starting its day drifted through his open window. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat by the kitchen table, thinking about the previous events. Hilda's trespass had caused a stir, not only for him but also for the entire neighborhood. Luke knew that his calm handling of the situation had left an impression, but he also understood that some neighbors might feel nervous about what had happened. As he sipped his coffee, his phone buzzed with a message from Officer Maria. "Morning. Luke, some neighbors are calling the station asking for updates about last night. They're curious, but none are hostile. Just thought you should know." Luke smiled and replied, "Thanks, Maria, I'll handle it from here. I want people to know that the situation is resolved and that everyone is safe." After breakfast, Luke decided to take a walk through the neighborhood. He wanted to observe how people were reacting and to check on the atmosphere. As he stepped onto the sidewalk, he noticed clusters of neighbors standing near their porches, whispering to each other and glancing in his direction. "Morning, Luke," said Mr. Thomas, who was trimming his hedge. "I still can't believe what happened last night." "Hilda arrested?" Luke nodded calmly. "Yes, she entered my home without permission. It was a clear violation of the law. I handled it carefully and it's over now." Some neighbors nodded in agreement while others seemed hesitant to comment. It was clear that news of the incident had spread quickly. Children rode their bikes along the street, oblivious to the tension. While parents exchanged quiet words about the event, Luke continued his walk, stopping to greet Mrs. Lily and her daughter. "Emma. Luke, are you sure you're okay?" Emma asked. "I'm fine, Emma," Luke replied with a reassuring smile. "It was unexpected, but everything is under control now." As Luke returned home, he noticed Hilda walking down the street toward the HOA office. Her head was held slightly lower than usual, and her usual confident stride seemed cautious. Luke wondered if she had reflected on the events of last night. Perhaps this experience had taught her something important about respect and boundaries. Inside his home, Luke went about his day, finishing some paperwork and tidying up the garden. The calm atmosphere helped him think clearly. He knew that handling such incidents calmly was essential, especially when neighbors were watching. His actions not only enforced the law but also demonstrated patience and fairness. By mid-afternoon, Luke received a call from Clara, Hilda's assistant. "Luke, Hilda asked me to reach out to you," she said. "She wants to discuss the incident. She said she realizes her mistake and wants to make amends." Luke raised an eyebrow but stayed calm. "I'll listen, Clara. Arrange a time for her to come by. I want to handle this professionally." Later, Hilda arrived at Luke's home. She seemed more composed, though her usual confidence was tempered with humility. "Luke, thank you for agreeing to meet," she said. "I've been thinking about last night and I understand that I overstepped my boundaries. I want to apologize for entering your home without permission." Luke nodded. "I appreciate your honesty, Hilda. It's important to understand that rules are not a license to disregard someone's personal space. Respect is the foundation of any community," Hilda sighed. "I realize that now. I've always focused on enforcing the rules, but I forgot that people's homes are private. I let my sense of authority cloud my judgment." Luke replied calmly, "It happens. What matters is that you learn from it. Everyone makes mistakes. The key is to reflect and improve." Hilda nodded, looking thoughtful. "I plan to address the HOA and explain my actions. I want to make sure this doesn't happen again and that our community understands the importance of respecting boundaries." Luke smiled slightly. "That's a good approach. Transparency and accountability help build trust." After their conversation, Hilda left and Luke felt a sense of relief. He had handled the situation without anger, maintained the law, and allowed someone to learn from their mistake. However, the ripple effect of the incident was still visible in the neighborhood. That evening, Luke noticed small groups of neighbors talking outside. Some were curious about how the situation would unfold, while others shared their thoughts about respecting personal property. Luke realized that his actions had sparked a community-wide reflection on boundaries and respect. The next day, during his routine patrol at the station, Luke received another call from Officer Maria. "Luke, Hilda contacted the HOA officially. She's planning a meeting to discuss her actions and reinforce proper procedures for inspections. She even mentioned you as an example of calm professionalism. Luke chuckled quietly. I didn't expect that. But it's good. People need to see that rules can be enforced without violating others' rights. Maria smiled. Exactly. The neighborhood will likely respect her more now, even if they were surprised by the incident. Back at home, Luke spent the evening preparing dinner. The calmness of his kitchen contrasted sharply with the tension of the previous night. He appreciated the routine and simplicity of daily life, understanding that such stability was part of what made his home a safe and peaceful place. Later, he took a walk through the neighborhood again. This time the atmosphere was noticeably lighter. Neighbors waved, children played, and conversations focused on everyday life rather than the incident. Luke felt satisfied seeing that order and calm were returning naturally. While walking, he noticed Hilda speaking with several neighbors near the park. She appeared to be addressing concerns calmly, explaining her perspective and listening attentively to feedback. It was a different Hilda than the one who had stormed into his house. Now she seemed genuinely concerned about building trust and maintaining respect within the community. Luke continued observing from a distance. He realized that the incident had created an unexpected opportunity for positive change. Not only had Hilda learned a valuable lesson, but the neighbors were also gaining a clearer understanding of boundaries and respect. Returning home, Luke checked his mailbox. There was a letter from the HOA inviting him to attend a neighborhood meeting as a guest speaker. The letter mentioned that the board wanted to discuss best practices for inspections and the importance of respecting residents' homes. Luke smiled. His calm approach had made a positive impact beyond just his own property. That night, Luke sat in his living room, reflecting on the events of the past few days. The situation with Hilda had been unexpected and challenging, but it had led to learning, reflection, and a stronger sense of community. He realized that handling conflicts with patience, clarity, and respect could create change without confrontation. As he looked out the window at the quiet street, Luke felt a renewed sense of purpose. Life in the neighborhood could be unpredictable, but he now understood that patience, professionalism, and respect could guide every challenge toward a positive outcome. Luke leaned back in his chair, sipped his coffee, and smiled. The night was calm. The stars twinkled above, and his home felt safe. He knew that the events with Hilda were only the beginning of a larger story about community, respect, and understanding. The next morning, Luke woke early, the sunlight spilling gently through his window. The neighborhood was quiet, but he knew the events of the past days were still fresh in everyone's mind. Hilda's unexpected visit, her arrest, and her reflections had sparked conversations all over the community. Today, Luke would see how the ripple effects continued. After breakfast, he received a call from Officer Maria. Luke, the HOA called. They want to discuss Hilda's actions and are considering new policies for inspections. They mentioned you might be invited as an observer or speaker. Luke nodded even though Maria couldn't see him. That's fine. Let them know I'll attend. It's important to guide them in a positive way. Later that day, Luke walked to the small HOA office at the end of the street. Inside, the atmosphere was tense but purposeful. Hilda was seated at the head of the table, looking calm but serious. Several board members were present, reviewing reports and notes about neighborhood inspections. Luke, thank you for coming, Hilda said quietly. I wanted to meet with you before we start. I need your advice on how to handle this situation with the board. Luke nodded. I'm here to help. My main concern is that boundaries and respect are clear. Everyone must understand that rules are important, but so is personal space. Hilda smiled faintly. I understand now. I was so focused on enforcing the rules that I forgot the human side of it. I want to correct that. The meeting began with Hilda explaining her actions to the board. She admitted that entering Luke's home without permission was a mistake, and outlined how she had been reflecting on her behavior. She spoke calmly, clearly, and with a sense of responsibility. The board members listened, nodding occasionally. Luke observed quietly, noting the change in Hilda's demeanor. She was no longer defensive or forceful. She seemed genuinely concerned about repairing trust within the community. One board member spoke up. Hilda, your dedication to the neighborhood is appreciated, but rules are only effective if they are enforced respectfully. This incident shows we need clear guidelines to prevent misunderstandings. Hilda nodded. Yes, I agree. I've learned my lesson and want to ensure it doesn't happen again. Luke added, It's important to create policies that balance enforcement with respect. Residents need to feel safe and respected, and inspection should never invade personal space without prior notice. The board took notes and asked questions. Hilda answered each calmly, demonstrating that she had reflected and changed. Luke noticed that her confidence was now paired with humility. It was a remarkable transformation from the assertive woman who had barged into his home just days ago. After the meeting, Hilda approached Luke. Thank you for attending. Your presence helped the board understand the importance of boundaries. I feel that this situation can now be a learning opportunity for everyone. Luke smiled. I'm glad. Sometimes incidents like this can guide communities to improve. The goal is always respect, not punishment. As he walked home, Luke noticed neighbors greeting him warmly. The conversation about Hilda and the HOA had not faded. Some were curious, some were supportive, and others expressed relief that proper procedures were being reinforced. Luke realized that his calm approach had influenced the entire neighborhood positively. At home, Luke received a small package. Inside was a simple card from Clara, Hilda's assistant, and a box of homemade cookies. The card read, Luke, thank you for helping Hilda see the importance of boundaries. Your calm and professional approach made a real difference. We appreciate your guidance, Luke smiled quietly. The gesture was small, but it reflected a larger change. People learning from mistakes, acting responsibly, and strengthening community ties. Later that evening, Luke went for a walk to clear his mind. The neighborhood was bathed in the soft light of the setting sun. Children played in yards, neighbors chatted on porches, and the air carried a sense of normalcy. Yet beneath the calm, he sensed a subtle shift. People were more aware, more respectful, and more thoughtful about their actions. As he walked, he noticed Hilda talking with a group of neighbors near the park. She was explaining the new HOA procedures and emphasizing respect and communication. Luke observed silently, appreciating how she had transformed her approach. What had started as a tense incident had turned into a chance for growth and understanding. That night, Luke reflected on the day's events. He realized that handling conflicts calmly with patience and clarity could turn challenges into opportunities for positive change. Hilda's actions had been a wake-up call, not just for her, but for the entire community. The next morning, Luke received a call from Officer Maria. Luke, I just wanted to let you know that the neighborhood meeting was successful. Hilda presented the new guidelines and the board has approved them. Residents are happy with the outcome. Luke smiled. That's good to hear. Clear rules, respect, and communication. Those are the keys to a healthy community. As he hung up the phone, Luke went outside to water his garden. The flowers were in full bloom and the small fountain sparkled in the sunlight. The tranquility of his home reinforced his belief that respect and understanding could resolve even the most challenging situations. Later, Luke decided to visit Hilda at her home. He wanted to ensure that she had the support she needed to maintain her new approach. Hilda welcomed him warmly. Luke, thank you for visiting. I've been thinking about how I can be a better member of the community. Luke nodded. It's about learning and applying those lessons. You've made good progress, Hilda. Keep focusing on respect and communication. They spent some time discussing practical ways to improve neighborhood inspections, creating clear communication methods and ensuring residents always felt safe and respected. Hilda listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions. Luke appreciated her dedication to change. As he returned home, Luke felt a sense of fulfillment. The situation with Hilda had started as an unexpected challenge, but it had led to growth, learning, and stronger community bonds. He realized that patience, professionalism, and respect could transform even tense situations into opportunities for improvement. That evening, Luke sat in his living room, reflecting on the past week. The neighborhood had learned an important lesson about boundaries and respect, and Hilda had shown that even people in authority could change. He felt proud of the role he had played, not through force or anger, but through calm and understanding. The street outside was quiet. The soft glow of streetlights illuminated the sidewalks, and the gentle sounds of the neighborhood at night filled the air. Luke smiled. He knew that life in the community could be unpredictable, but he had the tools to handle challenges with grace and fairness. As he looked out the window, Luke felt content. The events of the past days had been intense, but they had strengthened the neighborhood, taught valuable lessons, and built trust. He realized that true leadership and influence came not from authority alone, but from patience, respect, and the ability to guide others positively. Luke leaned back in his chair, took a deep breath, and let the calm of the evening wash over him. Hilda's transformation and the neighborhood's response were proof that even the most unexpected incidents could lead to positive outcomes. He felt ready for whatever challenges might come next, confident in his ability to maintain peace, fairness, and understanding in his home and community. The following morning, Luke woke to the soft light of dawn streaming through his bedroom window. The neighborhood was quiet, but the memories of the past week lingered. The incident with Hilda, her arrest, and the subsequent lessons had left a lasting impression on the community. Luke knew that the events were now more than just a story. They had become a turning point for the neighborhood. After breakfast, Luke decided to take a walk to see how the residents were responding to the changes. The street was calm and the air was filled with the pleasant sounds of morning activity. Children laughed as they played on the sidewalks, neighbors tended to their gardens, and greetings were exchanged warmly. As Luke walked, he noticed Hilda near the small park at the center of the community. She was speaking with a group of residents explaining the new HOA guidelines. Her posture was relaxed and her tone was kind and thoughtful. She emphasized the importance of respecting residents' homes while maintaining neighborhood standards. Luke paused to listen. Hilda's words were sincere, and it was clear that she had reflected deeply on her previous mistakes. The group of neighbors responded positively, nodding and asking questions. It was a sign that trust could be rebuilt when approached with honesty and respect. Luke approached Hilda, smiling. "Good morning, Hilda. I see the residents are responding well to your message." Hilda turned and returned his smile. "Good morning, Luke. Yes, I wanted to make sure everyone understands the changes. I've learned a lot from the past week and I want to do better." Luke nodded. "You've done well. It takes humility and reflection to admit mistakes and work to improve. The neighborhood benefits from that." Hilda's eyes softened. "Thank you, Luke. Your calm and fair handling of the situation set an example for me. I realize that respect is more important than rules alone." Luke and Hilda walked together through the park, observing the community. Neighbors waved and greeted them, their faces showing warmth and reassurance. It was clear that the neighborhood's atmosphere had shifted positively. The earlier tension had been replaced by understanding and cooperation. Later in the day, Luke returned home and checked his mailbox. Inside was a letter from the HOA board. The letter thanked him for attending the meetings, guiding discussions, and helping establish new procedures. The board emphasized that his professionalism had contributed to a safer, more respectful community. Luke felt a quiet sense of pride. The recognition was not about fame or authority. It was about knowing that his actions had helped shape a positive outcome for everyone. He placed the letter on the kitchen counter and smiled, feeling satisfied with the progress made. As the afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the neighborhood, Luke decided to visit a few neighbors. He wanted to ensure that everyone felt comfortable with the new guidelines and the recent changes. At Mr. Thomas's house, Luke was greeted warmly. "Luke, we appreciate how you handled everything," Mr. Thomas said. "Hilda's message today made a big difference. The neighborhood feels more harmonious already." Luke nodded. "I'm glad to hear that. Respect and understanding are as important as rules themselves. The community benefits when both are maintained." Next, Luke stopped by Mrs. Lily's house. Her daughter Emma ran to greet him. "Luke, everything is better now. Hilda talked to us and we all feel happy and safe." Luke smiled. "I'm glad, Emma. That's exactly the kind of environment we want in our neighborhood." After visiting neighbors, Luke returned home and reflected on the events of the past week. The incident with Hilda had begun as a challenge, but it had turned into a lesson for the entire community. Everyone had learned the importance of communication, respect, and accountability. Luke realized that even difficult situations could be transformed into opportunities for growth when handled calmly and fairly. That evening, Hilda stopped by Luke's house. She brought a small basket of homemade bread and jam as a gesture of goodwill. "Luke, I wanted to thank you personally," Hilda said. "Your approach taught me more than I expected." I understand the importance of boundaries and respect, and I want to continue improving as a neighbor and HOA member. Luke accepted the basket with a smile. Thank you, Hilda. I'm glad you've learned from the experience. Communities grow stronger when people understand each other and work together. Hilda nodded. I'll make sure our neighborhood remains a safe and respectful place. The past week has been a learning experience I won't forget. As she left, Luke felt a sense of closure. The situation that had begun with tension and misunderstanding had ended with mutual respect and understanding. Hilda's transformation was evident, and the neighborhood had regained its harmony. Later that night, Luke sat in his living room, looking out at the quiet street. The lights from the houses reflected softly on the pavement, and the gentle sounds of the evening carried through the air. The neighborhood was peaceful once again, and Luke felt content knowing that his home and community were safe and respected. He thought about the lessons learned, that authority must be balanced with humility, that rules cannot override personal boundaries, and that calm, thoughtful actions can resolve conflicts better than anger or force. These were lessons not only for Hilda, but for the entire neighborhood. Luke poured himself a glass of water and sat by the window, watching the stars appear in the night sky. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The events of the past week had tested patience, professionalism, and understanding, but they had ultimately strengthened the bonds of community. In the following days, life in the neighborhood returned to a pleasant rhythm. Hilda continued to serve the HOA, now more mindful of her actions and respectful of residents' homes. The board implemented clear procedures for inspections, and neighbors felt reassured that their boundaries would be honored. Luke continued his duties as a sheriff, but he also enjoyed the peaceful moments at home and in the neighborhood. His calm and fair handling of the incident had earned trust and respect, not only from Hilda but from the entire community. One afternoon, as Luke walked past the park, he saw children playing, neighbors chatting, and Hilda smiling while discussing community projects. The sight filled him with quiet happiness. Harmony had been restored, and the neighborhood had learned an important lesson about respect, communication, and understanding. Luke paused for a moment, taking in the view. He realized that life could be unpredictable, but patience, professionalism, and kindness could guide any challenge toward a positive outcome. The past week had been intense, but it had strengthened the neighborhood and created a sense of unity and trust. Returning home, Luke settled into his favorite chair with a book. The evening was calm, the air cool and comfortable. As he reflected on the past events, he understood that even small actions, like maintaining calm, showing respect, and offering guidance, could have a significant impact. Luke smiled, feeling grateful for the peaceful ending. The incident with Hilda had been a challenge, but it had ultimately resulted in stronger bonds, clearer understanding, and a safer, more respectful neighborhood. He felt confident that the community would continue to thrive with the lessons learned. As the stars shone above, Luke took a deep breath and let the calm of the night fill him. He knew that challenges might come again, but he also knew that patience, respect, and understanding would always guide him. The neighborhood was safe, the community was united, and harmony had been restored. Luke leaned back in his chair, content. The past week had shown him the power of calm leadership and respect. Hilda had learned a valuable lesson, neighbors had gained understanding, and his home remained a sanctuary of peace. The neighborhood had changed for the better, and Luke felt proud to have been part of that change. He knew that even unexpected challenges could lead to positive outcomes when handled with wisdom, care, and fairness. For the first time in days, Luke allowed himself to relax completely. The lights of the neighborhood twinkled softly. The sounds of evening carried a gentle rhythm, and a sense of peace filled the air. The community was stronger, relationships were mended, and everyone had learned the importance of respect and communication. Luke smiled and closed his eyes, ready to rest. The events of the past week had ended on a high note, leaving the neighborhood harmonious, Hilda wiser, and his own sense of satisfaction complete. It was a story of challenges, lessons, and growth, one that would be remembered in the community for a long time.